Peace and love. This is Karina Dean, and this is Jupiter Returns to Scorpio. So this is a general video. The best way to really get into the specifics on how Jupiter in Scorpio affects your chart is to have a natal chart done. But we are going to go through how Jupiter in Scorpio principles and energy is, and then we're also going to talk about how it can affect the signs. And we'll do this very basic, keep it very simple so that it can be understood by many, especially if you're just getting into astrology. I don't want to throw any fancy terms and all of that and get you confused and then you're not interested anymore. So one of my specialties is to keep it simple, as I am a Taurus sun astrologer, and I think it's important to also know who and what sign your astrologer is. Now, a typical Scorpio astrologer probably wouldn't want you to know they're Scorpio or Pisces, but it's good to know what your astrologer signs are, because their flavor is going to come through, their specialties. Where your sun is where you shine. So as a Taurus, I really do kind of slow down how I deliver it, and I'm also very focused on values and morals, and also on money as well. So as a Taurus astrologer, that's kind of what you're going to get from me. I'm also Libra rising, so you're also going to have more Venusian principles and aesthetics to how I deliver everything. And then I'm a moon in Gemini, so that also allows me to ramble and chat whenever I get a chance to talk about astrology. So that's important. It's important to know what your astrologer signs are. Just a little side note. Okay, so Jupiter in Scorpio. Jupiter is the sign of wisdom, knowledge, teaching, exploration, the gurus, travel, long distance traveling as well. And Scorpio is a sign that first rules over sexuality, specifically sex in general, rebirth, pregnancy, because Scorpio rules over the genital area, and so everything that has to do with sex is going to be under Scorpio. Scorpio is also about death. This the cusp between the cycles of life, death and rebirth. So Scorpio is fully embodying the concepts of death. And the reason that Scorpio is also related to the occult is because of Scorpio's relation to death and principles over death. So usually, right, when we think of our relationship to death, and those who are the most, spiritually inclined are going to be interested in the occult, because they're interested in what is beyond this physical realm. Where am I going, or where have I come from, right? Death and rebirth. So that's also why the genitals is also important, because when we think of sex, we think of pleasures, right? But that would actually be ruled by another sign. When it comes to sex and Scorpio, it's about the concepts of merging and coming back together in the spiritual sense, because we are merging to create life. So that's why Scorpio rules over sex. Hold on. Okay, so that's why Scorpio rules over sex in the most spiritual sense. And when Scorpio, and when we're talking about sex and Scorpio, we're talking about coming back to the source, feeling the source. And so even when we think of an orgasm, yes, it's pleasure, but Scorpio is ruled by the parts of the orgasm that's spiritually desiring to come back to the essential concepts of creation and being one. And that's why we have that kind of pleasure given to us in sex, because the whole idea, the whole concept of it is that we want to continue life, and we want to continue passing on our, inheritance to the life that we create and comes after us. So that's why Scorpio is also about inheritance. Jupiter and Scorpio we put these together, right? And now we have the wisdom and the guru and the expansion and the fortune of all that Scorpio portrays. This is about the dark side and death and rebirth and our concepts of sex, and our love of sex, all coming back up and expanding. When Jupiter is not expanding and embracing and giving fortune, because it's a benefic planet, it's also protection. When we combine these two, we are igniting the dark side. And I think that what will come up is the concepts of right and wrong. And is there an existence of right and wrong? I think because whenever you're dealing with the dark, especially in today's day and age, we see the darkness as something that can be wrong, right? But in the darkness, there's proof. There's like this need for it to exist as well, right? Because typically Scorpio is also about secrecy, and typically we aren't, as a society, we exhibit and exploit sexuality, but on a person-to-person basis, right? We're not always gonna share our sexual secrets, even endeavors or anything like that. So we might show ourselves off sexually, in an image or, online, but when we sit down face to face and we have the intimate conversation about what our desires are in sex, or who we've had sex with, any sort of conversation, or I'm interested in having sex with you, like when we have those conversations, that's a lot more intimate, and that's typically a lot more secret. It's more in the dark. Rise of the dark side, the expansion of the dark side is truly going to be a part of this journey as Jupiter goes through Scorpio, the expansion of the dark side. And that also is psychological, deep psychological thoughts, feelings, anything that we keep secret, anything that we hide, those are all going to actually be expanded. And that's why it becomes more of an exposing, because it's hard to tame it down when you have so much expansion. Through this transit, here are the things that I think you would see when Jupiter comes to Scorpio. You're going to have a lot more topics of sexuality, and it might be everything from forbidden, to what's typically, accepted. So you're going to have an expansion in the knowledge about it, the sharing about it, the exposing about it, and also the exploration about it in your day-to-day lives. Wherever you find Jupiter's in Scorpio in your chart, it will come into fruition in that kind of sense. But in generally, yes, you're going to feel, because this is the expansion coming to the genital area, you're probably going to feel more, connected to your desires, your inner desires, and all of that coming up more to the surface. What's also not always discussed when it comes to sex is power. And the concept behind sex is a lot of dominance and submission. So what you will also find, depending on where Jupiter is in Scorpio, is the sharing or the taking over of power. And maybe there's parts of the deep psychological states in which we want to submit, and then there are parts of us that want to dominate. And that also might be what comes up to the surface. So speaking on just the level of sex, we might find that to be very prominent, activities of sex, topics of sex, discussions, philosophies, all of those things are very possible under this return to Scorpio. Okay, so the other thing is pregnancy as well could be a topic of philosophy, maybe pregnancy within marriage, especially for women. Jupiter will ignite the concepts of marriage, so pregnancy under marriage or not. Also the ideas of, for women with Jupiter and Scorpio, this could be about your shared resources under a marriage. So this will also be imperative. I think that The concepts of like paternity testing is also going to be, kind of more out there. It's already a very big trend, but maybe more of this topic will come up, because the children is a source that is shared under the parents. So that too is why pregnancy, and then marriage is usually what happens before Scorpio and Libra. So once you get into Scorpio, you're in the marriage for the woman, and then what is her husband's resources going to be for her? That could also be just a big topic, especially depending on where this lands in your chart. Especially if it lands in its natural placement of the 8th house. Okay? The occult, the concepts of tarot, astrology, meditation, divination, all in the aid of healing psychologically, but because this is the dark side, this could also be the use of the occult, candle magic, everything that is, kind of hidden, but many use, like voodoo, anything that is under those divinations. They're either being used to help benefit your life, heal you from trauma, especially psychological trauma of the past, or they are being used for your own benefit, as a power trip, as a power struggle. So beware, these are all the dark forces coming up to the surface. A lot of this is going to be about accepting your dark side and feeding into your dark side, and that's why you're going to have a bunch of more occult happenings going on. And not to say that everybody who practices the occult is on the same side, right? And the reason that I talk about this in the concepts of competition and war and war under the dark forces is because Scorpio is ruled traditionally, classically, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Okay? And when Mars rules over Scorpio, it's not as assertive and direct and in your face like Aries. Because it's dark side, it is behind your back. It is hidden. It is a slow rumble, but there's definitely an oppositional force. Some people might still struggle with the concepts of using astrology and tarot and the dark divination. I think this entire experience when Jupiter comes to Scorpio is the revival of the divinations, and more than likely you're going to see them more trending and more popular, so you're going to have more occultists out and exposed in the open, so that it's seen that it exists, even if you don't believe in it, which is a whole other topic. You're going to see that these things exist. This could be a great time for readers, especially if you're in the healing sector of it. Scorpio is also related to, because it's exposing, it's related, and it's about more of like investigating the dark, right? So because of that, this is where you have more criminal and like investigators who are exposing criminal activity. That too can be a part of this transit. So these are all topics that I feel like are going to be very prominent as this continues to develop, as Jupiter makes its way through Scorpio. So we talked about sex, we talked about the occult, the dark side forces coming up to light, and you're going to see literally a war between those who work under the dark side. You are going to literally see dark forces, the forces of the dark side coming up and battling for power. And I think that there are two forces, very specific. It's dark workers who use the light, but they use their inner work, their inner healing, their emotional intuition, and their abilities to have the intent to heal self and then heal others through their inner work, which is dark work. Those are the dark workers, and these are the ones who are going to be really prominent. The light workers might get, pushed to the side during this transit, come back maybe during Jupiter's return to Sagittarius. The light workers will be working with Jupiter as protection for dark workers, because Jupiter does rule over light work, but because Jupiter is going underneath and going deep into the dark and expanding that, this is the time where the dark workers are going to shine. Those who spend a lot of their time, indoors, reflecting, meditation, and who have the intent to heal, they will be called to participate in this oppositional force, under basically the war, the margin part of Jupiter's return to Scorpio. We are also going to see maybe more mental illness come out, or the truth about mental illness, or the concepts behind what it really is to come out, because sometimes this in the third world matrix, mental illness is just diagnosed as an illness, when in fact, in some cases, it can be like, it can be many things. It could be a possession, over the mind by spirits. It can be, actually, in fact, divine gift of medium, in which maybe some people who suffer from mental illness are really mediums, and they're just seen as sick. So these are also things that can happen, because we're dealing with the psychology, the deep psychology. We're dealing with trauma when you're dealing with Scorpio. You're dealing with Jupiter, you're seeing the protective side of it. So Jupiter wants to explore the concepts, explore the philosophies under all of Scorpio's principles.